right, so welcome to the finalist voting for the Maven Super Bowl challenge. We know who won the actual Super Bowl by now, so congrats to the LA Rams. But now it's time to find out, who won the better of the two prizes. So just for some context, we had over 150 entries this time that we had to narrow down to the 8 finalists that we're going to talk about right now. And I actually want to start by just reading the challenge prompt, which is really what we're going to be using as a criteria to guide our discussion and then ultimately our decision making here. So for the Super Bowl challenge, you'll be assuming the role of marketing analyst at Maven Motors, an up and coming US car manufacturer looking to make a splash in the market. Now they've approved the budget to run a TV spot during the 2022 Super Bowl, but need you to analyze historical data to help guide the creative direction. So the task here for the challenge and for all the entries was to recommend a data-driven strategy for the Maven Motors Super Bowl spot and to present it in the form of a single-page report or dashboard. So with that said, let's kick things off with our first finalist here, which is Thomas Vine.
All right, I'll speak to Thomas's submission. I absolutely loved this one. The first thing that kind of caught my eye is that it's such a great, fantastic layout. And it really checks all the boxes that we look for from a data visualization standpoint. It's readable, it's got a clear and intuitive flow, it's super clear, effective use of color, really not much noise, great choice of visuals and design principles here. And I want to just take a minute and talk about something that, for those who have taken our data viz courses or Enrique's advanced dashboard design course, we often talk about something called Gestalt principles, right? And it's how you package and communicate information and use things like similarity, enclosure, proximity to help communicate really clearly. And I honestly think this is one of the best, if not the best, examples of someone using Gestalt principles that I've ever seen in these challenges. And it's subtle stuff, but it's why this report looks so clean. So the fact that he's using headers to clearly distinguish different sections of the report, he's using color to draw attention to key insights within the text, he's using subtle spacing to group similar visuals together. And when you do that well, it really pays off and it helps you tell a very clear story. So I think Thomas has done that exceptionally well with this submission. So that's the first thing that really caught my eye. The second, he answered the challenge prompts, right? It sounds obvious, but it's something that we always look for when we're coming up with our finalist pool. He provides his recommendation right there in the header, and then he supports that recommendation throughout the entire report, which is fantastic. Third thing I noticed, just from an analytical standpoint, really strong analytical approach here. One thing that I really loved about this submission is that he used a calculated engagement score to rank the ads. So instead of just looking at the raw volume of views, which really isn't the best KPI or measure of success, he factored in both the view volume compared to the average, as well as the ratio of views to likes, which I thought was very clever. And the last thing that really jumped out at me was the fact that he broke out the automotive category specifically and compared it against other advertisers, which, given the prompt, I think was a really smart and appropriate approach to take. And then I love that he kind of drilled one level deeper to talk about specific competitor trends as well. So overall, I think this was an unbelievably strong submission, great recommendation, data-driven approach. Great work, Thomas.
Next up, Gerard.
All right. Yeah. So here's another really fantastic submission from Gerard, and kind of from an overarching standpoint, there were a couple of pieces to this dashboard that really stood out. First, there's a really great flow from top to bottom, and overall a really solid analysis. There are a few things that kind of really stood out to me. First, the kind of plan and strategy section up top here, It does a great job of framing the actual problem, stating the dashboard's purpose, and then defining, what success is going to look like for the rest of the dashboard for what he's presenting. And then after the section, again, he's clearly going in and lays out the scope of the data set that he used, or the scope of the data in the data set that he used, and then presents his analysis, and with a bunch of different kind of clearly sectioned visuals, right? One of the visuals that I really liked here is the first section here showing the number of advertisements by industry, and I like how he's comparing again, looking at looking at the auto industry compared to all others, right? And these two charts here, they've got synchronized X and Y axes, so you can kind of compare them side to side. But then, on the right side of the screen here, he's pulling out all of the other advertisers from the industry, and again, you can clearly see that there's a decline. That trend is declining, but it's not quite as steep when you're just looking at the auto industry. So again, I just think this is a really kind of effective and clear way to show that trend, and then the category composition as well. Kind of jumping down to the recommendation section here, it's again just a really well. I thought this was really well done here, where there's a clear recommendation for the number of advertisements, the duration, the cost, and the type of advertisement to be used. It's all really clear. One of the kickers for me, particularly, was this last point where he talks about running a separate social media campaign in parallel, or leading up to the Super Bowl ad, to really, it's a great take on that awareness play, right? You're building excitement that something big is coming, lead up to that Super Bowl spot. So, from an end-to-end dashboard point, I thought that Gerard did a really good job here. One last thing to kind of mention, and this didn't really factor into the analysis, but I think it's worth calling out, is Gerard creates these blog posts where he writes a very detailed outline to his approach, and how he goes through thinking about creating the dashboard, the setup, looking at the data sets. And I love it because he's not only just sharing his entire development process, right? You get, 2,000 words and visuals worth of Gerard's thinking and how he's tackling it, but he's also teaching other people, like, here's how you plan, develop, and then deliver these really high quality insights and recommendations at the end of the day, right? It's not just about, I'm going to use this visual to show, a trend over time or something like that. It's really much at a much higher quality than that. So, hats off to Gerard for consistently doing this with his dashboard.
Hats off indeed. So great work, Gerard. Next up, Ivan. So I think I'll talk about Ivan. I remember this is an entry that I loved as soon as I first saw it on LinkedIn, and it was funny because Ivan actually called out in his post that he thought that his layout and design wasn't as strong as others out there. But honestly, I actually thought he did a great job. It's definitely understated, but I think it works really, really well because even though it does have a lot of text, it's really easy. It's very approachable and it's very, very easy to read, which is ultimately all you can ask for, I think. But my favorite things here, the flow works great. He's got his recommendations, and then the way that he's going to measure success as far as how a commercial is successful. But my favorite part is just that first kind of chart in which he calls out that the top 10 commercials actually make up 88% of all the YouTube views. And actually the top one commercial is almost 50% of all the views. And then he also calls out how the most successful car company commercial is so far behind those. And it's actually a lot more successful than other car commercials if we actually look at his final chart in here. And what I really love, that despite he calls all these things out, which I guess maybe it's not easy to do, but he could have left it there, he actually goes to kind of tell you that you do have to be careful with highly skewed data like this, because as he states, the average number of views that you could put in your report is 157 million, and you could say, hey, we could expect this average number of people to watch our ad on YouTube, but the median is actually 0.06 million, which is nothing compared to that. And I'd actually argue it's an even more valuable number here than the average because of all these outliers. So again, and after that, he just kind of goes into, which characteristics the top 10 commercials used. And I love that he's got that, tempting to try to copy the most successful commercial, which has 50% of the views. And he actually goes to say that Doritos actually had a very similar commercial that same year that completely flopped. So it's not as straightforward as you'd think. And to that point, in his recommendation, he's not as clear cut as most people. He actually mostly talks about what not to do based on the data available. And honestly, I think that's really valid because anything more than that would be reaching a bit because of the nature of this data. So I really like that. And final thing here, and I'm going to extend my time. Ivan kind of calls out in his post that he'd like to hear our opinion on what we would have done with the data or what we think the insights are here. And in his, point number 2 on how to measure success, he mentions that the number of TV viewers per year isn't affected by individual commercials, which is true. So his analysis on how to measure success is based on YouTube views. And while I do think that that logic is sound, I actually do have a counterpoint there. And that's to say that I don't really think like the measure of the success of a commercial isn't, how many people choose to see it by looking on it, look for it on YouTube, or how many people, find it memorable. It's just how many people see it, right? Like that's what you want. You want to see how many eyes your dollar is getting, right, on your brand. So to that, I think actually TV viewers are more important because they're just so much larger than the median YouTube audience, right? I don't know if you guys saw, but the most popular ad on the Super Bowl this year was a Coinbase commercial that was literally a QR code just bouncing around the screen. So no animals, no funny, no, celebrities, no danger, no patriotic, and it ended up crashing their site. So, I mean, they probably should have been more prepared, but I just thought that was really interesting. But that's my 2 cents on this data set. And again, great job, Ivan. I think he did a really, really fantastic job. Better than he thinks, I think. So there we go. Next up, Robbie.
Great. Yeah. So I'll be talking about Robbie's. First, I love the way that he bookended this one. He's got a nice introduction, kind of explaining some assumptions, talking about the data set a little bit, and then some very clear recommendations at the end. Throughout the middle of the report, it's just very easy to follow analyses here. And the piece that I want to specifically call out kind of got me to light up was when I saw like, oh my gosh, I think somebody actually used a tree map correctly in one of these challenges. And you probably heard me harp on this before, but most of the time people like to put in a tree map for variety's sake, and they'll use it for single dimension analysis. And what I would say to that is you should just go with a bar chart, go with something else that is better at communicating single dimension analysis. What Robbie's done here is use the tree map correctly because he's using it for hierarchical data, where basically first he's grouping data into blue, gray, orange, and then within those squares, breaking it down into a second dimension. And this is exactly what you're supposed to do when you're using a tree map. This is when it is effective. So I love it, Robbie. Above all, thank you for giving us a correct example to share with people about tree maps. I just skimming through kind of all the challenges. There were plenty that are the incorrect example, and it's kind of one of my pet peeves when I see people trying to stuff variety for variety's sake. So great job on this one in general, and well done.
All right, thanks, John, and great job, Robbie. All right, next up, Gaza. So I'll speak to this one as well. I really like this one for a few reasons. First of all, I found it interesting that he actually built this just using Python, which I think really speaks to the visualization capabilities of that tool, which is great to see. I didn't know you could do this. Basically, I mean, maybe it's harder to do that on other software. Maybe it's even easier, but I just thought it was really impressive, especially because that bottom left chart may be my favorite chart out of all the entries, because I think it does the best job of communicating the characteristics and the frequencies in which they're shown or used in Super Bowl commercials, and especially how they're used together. So I thought that was really great, really well done. And that kind of supporting visual that he has, in which he shows, which characteristics will help, add extra views or detract from views if used or not, was really valuable too. I'm actually not sure how he calculated that, but I think it's really useful, from the marketing perspective of, if I want my video to get more views, using these characteristics will help that. Using these won't help that, and these others really have no impact, so I can choose to include them or not. I wish he had a recommendation to go with all this. I think that's kind of my only caveat here. But beyond that, really, really great work.
All right, so I'll speak to Kevin's here. So this entry from Kevin, I think it's one of the best designed dashboards that we saw, in this challenge. And I'm saying that from a perspective of, kind of overall theme, use of graphics and visuals, and just kind of the look and the feel of it. When I was looking at this dashboard for the first time, it was one of the first submissions that kind of made me feel the theme, if that makes sense. It's kind of like you feel like you're part of the Super Bowl or part of the advertisement to some extent. And kind of similar feedback to to Mark's winning entry from the last challenge for the Harry Potter challenge, right, where that theme just made you kind of feel like you were part of it. But again, so from an overarching standpoint, I really think that this was just a very, very well designed dashboard here. Beyond the design, I think that Kevin's analysis and recommendations were really strong. One of my favorite visuals here in the whole dashboard is the area chart, where he's comparing the TV views to the YouTube views, and is specifically calling out that slingshot baby ad, right? Where there were a lot of other dashboards that presented the same exact data, but this was kind of the first time where it really popped, and you kind of had that, oh man, this really is a huge increase in YouTube video views versus the TV audience size. So I thought that was a really great use of that visual. It was super clear, easy to understand. Beyond that, from the recommendations, again, thought these were pretty good. They were clear. And what I really liked was that they actually provide for a little bit of a conversation for the executive team or the leadership team, like whoever's going to be taking the recommendations or the insights from this dashboard. And it allows them to have that kind of a conversation within a boundary, right? So what Kevin did is he starts off and he's like, for these reasons, I'm going to recommend this kind of safe approach, right? But if you didn't want to take this approach, here are a couple alternatives that, that could have a big impact, but they're not quite as safe, is my previous recommendation here. So I liked that approach to the kind of final recommendation section here, where it opens it up to a little bit of a conversation based on, personalities, risk tolerance, that kind of stuff. But yeah, all in all, really, really amazing work here from Kevin.
Yeah, I really like presenting the alternative as well. So great work, Kevin. And let's move on.
All right, I'll take this one. So Vaejan, a familiar name, a familiar participant in our challenges, and someone that I always look forward to seeing his work. Quick pro tip for all of you listening: anytime you include a cartoon version of me holding a giant Dorito, it's just a guaranteed win. So I can be bribed, and I thought he did a great job adding a little fun to this. So that was really exciting to see. But in all seriousness, this is really like such a classic piece. It's amazing custom design work. Really clean, really polished. And what I liked was that there were some very creative and clever methods of applying that Super Bowl theme to the report and to each of the visuals. So the donut style chart that he converted into a helmet, the Lombardi stacked column chart on the right, that scatter plot that's designed to kind of resemble a game plan. Just really creative work, as always, from Vaejan, which is very cool to see. He did answer the prompts and share some key takeaways at the bottom of the report, which was great. And one interesting point that I didn't see anywhere else was he talked about the potential to actually earn a secondary income stream through the YouTube views, which I thought was kind of a creative spin on things there. I do like that he tried to narrow the focus down. So most of this report is really drilling in on the two key players based on viewership, so Coca-Cola and Doritos, and specifically talking about elements of the number 1 and number 2 ads. I think the flip side of that is that I don't know how relevant some of these insights would be to an automotive brand. So I think I would have been very interested to see what this breakout would have looked like with more of a focus on automotive instead. But overall, I had a ton of fun going through this report and thought it was a really clever and great submission.
I mean, he's a super creative guy, I guess. But it's great that he actually has the substance behind it. So again, great entrant. And moving on to our final finalists.
All right. Yeah, here I'll talk about Jeroen. He is somebody that many of you may know from kind of sharing his story, his journey, and how he broke into a data career. And so I love seeing him enter these challenges, because if you're familiar with that story, being a part of one of these challenges is how he actually landed his first job in data. So just really cool to see him continue to participate. He's an awesome guy. If you haven't seen that story, check it out. It's on our YouTube channel under student success stories, under that playlist, and it's a fun one, pretty quick. So onto the entry. I like that he dove into what worked and started at the very top with just looking at everything and what worked and slicing and dicing that a little bit. And then he pretty quickly narrowed into just looking at the auto industry, which I think that was great. We definitely saw a number of people do this, but not everybody focused on the auto industry, which for the specific case, that was really important to think about. He's also done a really good job of putting together some trends. So for example, it was really easy to see here visually the shift into 60 seconds over time on that one on the right. And at the bottom, the kind of staggering increase in the cost, which I realized my estimate of the price of a Super Bowl commercial was a few years out of date. It's definitely run up a little bit. So we're probably not going to see Maven in the next couple of years with one, but who knows? So and then he's got great recommendations on here, and very clearly communicated, and that's such a important part of any of these analyses is the communication side. So awesome entry. You're an awesome guy, and happy to have you in these. And hopefully folks will check out that video and get inspired and see what participating in this stuff can actually do for your career.
Absolutely. And yeah, great job, Gerard. Great job, everyone that participated, and these 8 finalists, I guess, in particular. And now it's time to start narrowing these down and start coming to a final vote. So I don't know, what are you guys' thoughts? Who do you think? I think we'll try to narrow it down to 2 kind of finalists from the finalists, and then we'll vote from there. So anyone have anyone they'd like to submit? Got some really great entries here.
I'd like to propose that Thomas earn one of those final 2 slots.
Yeah, I like Thomas a lot as well. I'd be happy with that. I don't know, John, Aaron, what do you guys think?
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, get on board with Thomas as well. it's funny, like looking through these, just again, like after talking through them all, like they all do things very well.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I really like the flow and the recommendations here. It's maybe a little less in depth than the rest. I don't know. I think Vaejan's is really great too because he kind of brings the best of both worlds. Like you said, Aaron, for Kevin, like he really brings that Super Bowl commercial feel while still actually providing like meaningful analysis. I remember the first time I saw this chart, I didn't realize it was actually a scatter plot. I just thought he made a novel way of saying like these are the strategies for Doritos and Coke, but it's actually not, which makes it all the better for it. Again, maybe he should have focused, like you said, Chris, on more like automated versus the rest. But I still think it's a great entry.
Yeah, I think arguably the best use of creativity and visual design, which certainly is worth something here. I could see Vaejan being another finalist as well.
Yeah, and it's fun. I hadn't noticed that what you mentioned about YouTube revenue, and it's something that I actually wanted to call out as well because, well, for it to be YouTube revenue, the company would have to upload the ad themselves, which surprisingly not a lot of them do. I don't know if it's got something to do with like any restrictions that the broadcaster has or something, because a lot of these were actually posted by someone like you or me that just decided to post it, which actually like skewed the viewership a lot as well. I mean, NFL, I think the second most popular is the NFL Next 100 commercial uploaded by the NFL, which obviously gets a lot more views because if you search for it, you're going to click on the official one instead of the 100 other copycats. So there's less dispersion between the views, which I don't know. Like I don't think he states it specifically that we should upload our own ad. I wish someone actually had said that, based on noticing that not everyone does. Plus, it does help its success. But it was a good call out on the YouTube revenue.
Part of me was wondering if someone might be able to find data that could tie this back or at least correlate this with real sales, right? Because we talk a lot about views and ad awareness and brand recall and stuff like that, and that's why brands are paying whatever $200,000 per second of ad. But ultimately, if we're putting our business intelligence hats on, the natural question is like, does that awareness and do those ad impressions actually translate to sales? Which is something that the biggest brands in the world are still trying to answer themselves. But I was curious if anyone might be able to take a stab at that analysis, which would have been really fascinating.
Yeah, especially because like the people that did focus on automotive, like Gerard, like you'll note it, they were actually the companies that spent the most, or one of the companies that spend the most versus others, with the like least amount of success as far as YouTube views, which is how some people measured success. So it begs the question, like, why would they keep posting Super Bowl ads? And the answer probably is because they do get a lot of sales that aren't, translated into YouTube views. And a lot of the YouTube audience, I would guess, as far as like YouTube, like funny commercials, isn't the target demographic for a car company because they're not like teenagers, or that's when I used to search for Super Bowl commercials. I still do now occasionally, aren't buying cars, right? So yeah, it would have been nice to see. I mean, maybe people don't expect to add supplementary data because we're providing the data ourselves, but to anyone watching, we absolutely encourage that. And it would have been nice to see.
All right, so what do we think? Vaejan and Thomas?
I'd be fine with that.
Any objections?
No, I think we'd go with that.
Sounds right.
All right, so we've got Thomas is going to be number one for anyone that wants to vote for him. Vaejan is going to be number two. Everyone ready?
Yep.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Oh,
Well,
only
3-1, Thomas.
Thomas takes it.
All right.
Congratulations, Thomas. Round of applause for him.
Yeah, congrats, Thomas.
Nice work, Thomas.
All right. Congratulations, Thomas, on winning the Maven Super Bowl challenge. And the prize for you, as you know, and as stated here, is a free annual membership to Maven. And as a little kind of kicker surprise that we added in there, you'll also get a second free annual membership for you to give away to anyone of your choice. So congratulations once again, and thanks to everyone who participated. This was another great, successful challenge, and it's always a pleasure to watch all the entries. So thanks a lot, and see you guys in the next one coming up soon.
Yeah, this was awesome. And before we break, just Chris, is that a new shirt?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, our mission statement, right? We empower everyday people to change the world with data. What do you guys think?
I think
Very
that's how
nice.
I would want one.
Yeah, what's
the fifth icon?
What's that?
What's the fifth icon there?
after Tableau?
Hang on, I think my connection might be bad.
I guess we lost them.
Oh well, we'll never know. Anyway, thanks for taking the time,
All right.
guys, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Sweet, good stuff.